But then COVID hit. I was still a reservist in the military, got the order to get the vaccine, refused. Official and formal reprimands, discipline, punishment. It's my conviction that the left is out to destroy us. They're out to destroy America as we understand it. There's only one way to behave if you're in the middle of a war, and that's to volunteer and go and fight. Part of that, I sort of have to dive into this, like, what is transgender care? Pagans have nothing on us as to what we do to our children in the name of science. The Lord never wastes any effort like that. Give me those chances to obey you even when it looks like I've been forsaken. And that's where he just shows up, and it's the most glorious thing.
Welcome back to the MakeReady Podcast. My name is Brian Sims, and today I sit down with Jace Yarbrough, attorney, veteran, father, and candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in Texas's 32nd District. Jace shares his journey of faith, service, and conviction, and why he believes obedience to God doesn't stop at the church doors, but extends into public life, leadership, and every hard decision. This is a thoughtful and honest conversation about calling, courage, and what it looks like to stand firm when the stakes are high. If you enjoy this conversation, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you'd like to support our mission, you'll find a link in the description below. This is the MakeReady Podcast. Jace Yarbrough. So a few years ago, I made it a point in my life to surround myself with men that I want to be like. And I want to chase men that are chasing Christ in ways that I see as extremely good. And so, dude, the way that you lead your life, the way that you lead your family, and the way that you seek to lead others and give yourself up in ways that many men don't is just unbelievable. And how's that for a start?
So, well, I don't know what to say other than I think there's somebody else behind me. I don't know.
So the question is, do you attribute that all to Worldview Academy?
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yes. So I was grateful to be able to go through Worldview Academy. I was grateful to your dad for all the work that he did, obviously, to create that organization. And yes, every success I've ever had can ultimately trace back to my time there.
Well, catch me up. I mean, I'd introduce yourself to guys that are listening, people that are listening. Tell me who Jace Yarbrough is, where you come from.
Sure. I was raised in a blue-collar family in a little bitty, dusty West Texas town. Population 714, and had a good upbringing and a good childhood. Went to college down at the University of Texas, studied electrical engineering and government.
Yeah, I'll let that pass. I'll let that pass.
Sure. I have a love-hate relationship with the University of Texas. Then joined the military. Was active duty Air Force for a time. Great experience, but my wife had our first. And we wanted to raise kids back home near grandparents. So I separated from active duty, stayed in the reserves, but then went to law school out at Stanford. Was there during President Trump's first election in 2016. And best thing that could have happened to me. My wife says it radicalized me. I think it just opened my eyes to a lot of truths that I probably couldn't have learned any other way than to see firsthand the left's response, their agenda, their sort of understanding of the world and what they want.
Was there like a moment that happened that you're like that just kind of clicked for you?
The short version, I mean, the short answer is yes. There was a lot of lead up to it. The school and the administration had planned what they called a collective sigh of relief for the day after the campaign. So this is the Wednesday. Right, and their take is, we don't know who's going to win, and it doesn't matter. We'll just all be able to breathe a collective sigh of relief.
Nudge,
right?
nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right, when this contentious election is over. Well, it turned into a cry-in, which, I mean, the schadenfreude of that day, I really can't express how incredible it was. But I had a professor who I actually had respected up to that point. She was herself married to a veteran. She stood up and said, "This feels like 9/11. Over 3,000 innocent Americans dead, similar to the result of an election because you disagree with somebody's politics and fundamental convictions that I happen to very much agree with. And, at the time, everyone was making much of, the president's sort of personal life. And, my take all along when I would get into spats with my fellow law students was, look, I'm not going to clutch my pearls because the party of Lyndon Johnson and Bill Clinton and JFK tells me that I should, right? This man is standing for things that I absolutely agree with, and you should too, if you love all good, true, and beautiful things. So, yeah, that moment was pretty crystallizing for me. The whole experience was as well. And then as I began to kind of become more assertive, in those convictions, the pressure increased, the fire increased. And that's continued apace, really since then. So we got out of law school, came to Dallas. My wife was born here in North Texas. So came here and I practiced law with a well-known firm downtown Dallas. It's where I grew up as a lawyer and learned from good people how to practice. But then COVID hit, and that was another fairly significant turning point in our lives. So I was still a reservist in the military, got the order to get the vaccine, refused. That resulted in official and formal reprimands, discipline, punishment. They were getting ready to boot me out. I can sort of talk about that whole process if you want. The short version is they weren't successful. So I don't know how many of us there are, but I am one of the few, I think, military members who never got the vax and was never also administratively separated.
Because you fought it.
Correct. I refused. Yeah, I refused. They just like everybody else, I got the written direct order. You will go get this medical procedure, quote unquote. My law firm did the same thing. Basically, they implemented a draconian vaccine policy. I was not going to comply with it, and so I resigned the day before it went into effect. That ultimately worked out for the good. I now am in practice with a buddy. He and I have a firm that he started. He was on his own for about 18 months. But we do sort of the conservative version of Lawfare. So we sue the left, and every one of our cases advances a conservative principle that's important to the conservative legal movement. So we sue abortionists that profit off the taking of innocent human life. We sue green energy companies. We're suing the city and county of San Francisco for firing a bunch of firefighters, police officers, and nurses for refusing to get the COVID vaccine. We've got some antitrust lawsuits on behalf of, X and Rumble and other well-known entities. There were some globalist advertisers that were throttling ad revenue for those platforms. So we do good work. I like to say I make the right people uncomfortable. And that's become a theme. So you and I are probably going to talk about vocation. One of my vocations is to be directly engaged in what I have described as, and what other people before me describe as, kind of a cold civil war. It's my conviction that the left is out to destroy us. They're out to destroy our way of life. They're out to destroy America as we understand it. And there's only one way to behave if you're in the middle of a war, and that's to volunteer and go and fight. So obviously I'm speaking sort of non-kinetically. At least most of us have not been engaged in any kind of kinetic
you have specific gifts that are useful in that time. In this time. I mean, and one of the big questions I have for you that we've never really talked about is there's a lot of men who have God-given skills that would be useful in a conflict like this, the conflict of ideas and truth. And they stay out of it because of how it's going to affect their family.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was the process you went to really, and we'll get back into the story in a minute, but I'm just really curious how you went through that process.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I have found helpful as a parent and a husband is to invite my family into whatever the endeavor is, and to say, as the sort of head of this household, the mark that God has put on me in my life is going to have a big impact on your own lives. And that is something that in God's providence we should embrace because it's part of his plan. It is, I think too often there is a tendency, and this is very true in American education, and we can talk, we'll talk about the school probably that we founded and that whole bit in a little bit. So I've thought a little bit more about education, I think, than most fathers, non-teaching fathers. But one of the, I think, unfortunate aspects of how we raise children today is we do raise them in a fairly, we kind of segregate them from reality. We put them off in a protected space, and we don't want them to interact with the world as it is. And sometimes that comes up in ways that you wouldn't expect. Just take for example, the practice of putting children into grades in school that are very narrow in terms of their age bandwidth. And one of the unfortunate consequences of that is that children aren't comfortable with people kind of all ages, older, younger. And that's a sort of protection. That's just kind of sealing them off, I would say, from reality. And that's not good. Children grow not when you sort of get a fact or a technique into their brains, but when they mimic you and participate in the kind of activities that you're participating in. And at the end of the day, they're going to take seriously the things that they see their father taking seriously. And so if I want them to be strong Christians who will stand for their faith even when it is difficult, it's good for me to model that. And it's good for them to see me modeling that. It's also good for them to participate in that to a limited extent as children of a father and a mother who are doing that professionally, personally, in their community. So inviting them into that in various ways. So obviously it's talking with them, just explaining, hey, this is what we're sensing God doing. We're trying to discern whether this is the right path. Should we go down path A, path B, or path C? Pray with us about that. Then we come back, okay, this is the decision we've made. These are some of the things that are going to result from that. These things are going to be hard and difficult. These things are probably going to be a blessing. Just because something hard is hard doesn't mean the Lord has not called you to it. Quite the contrary, actually. And then you try and bring them along, whatever your profession is. And it's tougher today because of the way that the professions exist and the sort of environment and expectations that are there, especially for dangerous blue-collar jobs or certain white-collar professions, right? As an attorney, it's been sometimes difficult for me to bring my children along to that sort of thing because I've got an attorney-client relationship and confidentiality matters, right? And the number of people in the room can change or affect that. So you do what you can in that space, but fundamentally it's bring them in, invite them in, allow them to participate in and observe you participating, because at the end of the day, they're mimetic. They're going to mimic you, and you want them mimicking you, following after God.
Especially boys. You want to see like, this is what a man does.
Yes, yeah, especially sons. I think there is something there's something important about the experience of a thing that attracts little boys. I think in my own experience with my own sons and daughters, I've got 3 sons and 2 daughters. I think my daughters are a little bit better at some abstract things, at least at the beginning in the early stages, than are my sons, right? And there's a lot a little guy learns from picking up a stick and hitting a tree with it. And as sort of simple as that activity sounds, my boys can entertain themselves for a long time doing simple things like that. That's not to say that girls don't also benefit from experience and hands-on work.
But boys and girls are different.
Oh, very different. Yeah, very different. You can look at the way they interact with their younger siblings, for example. My oldest is a son. He's going to be 13 soon. Very conscientious, very responsible, very concerned about doing the right thing and making sure that he's fulfilled his duties, right? Which is great. Super conscientious. I could never, ever leave our now 2-year-old, but when she was an infant, I could never leave her with him alone for more than 5 or 10 minutes, right? Whereas my next child, my daughter, who's about 1.5 years younger than my oldest, she's not particularly type A, conscientious. That's not really her approach, but she was great with our little one. And it's because she took a kind of unique interest in the baby that our oldest son just didn't. And And so, that's a small example of what I've observed in my own children. And
I mean, I already see that. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old boy, and it's fascinating to see God's imprinted identity developing in them differently. And they have, by and large, the same experiences up to this age.
Yeah.
And they're totally different.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We had a little project for the kids in which one of the things they were doing was talking about and writing down what they wanted to be when they grew up. And my oldest son, I want to be a priest. And my daughter said, I want to be a mom. And I thought that was great. I loved that answer. Right. And we don't have the sort of like, we don't necessarily talk directly about those things yet. Our culture obviously has a lot of things to say about that. And there's a lot of baggage associated with it that I think is super harmful. But that was a natural response to the kind of life that they have led up to this point, and I think a very healthy and good one. And so I was proud of that.
It's reflective of what they see you value.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I agree. I mean, I agree with Lewis or Chesterton, or maybe both of them said it at some point. Right? The highest and noble profession, the profession to which all others tend and support, is really the making of a home. Mm-hmm. And we have done so much to devalue, to minimize and even ridicule the American family, both the father and his profession in various ways, the mother, and sort of trying to force her into this kind of weird masculine stereotype, and then just devaluing the project of homemaking. Mm-hmm. And as a result, our homes are broken by and large.
Yeah, I mean, our whole culture, even Christian culture, by and large, has devalued the homemaker, and so we've told women that is not as valuable. What Dad does, that is valuable. So just sit on the sidelines, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm-hmm. It is an art and a gift to be able to make a home and to make it well. It's not something that one person can do alone by any stretch. In some ways, there's this necessary part of kind of the rhythm of the family that determines the feel of a home. But you need someone there who has the wisdom and the perception to sort of see, what's going on, and to put certain things in place to make sure that the context in which the husband and wife are being formed, the children are being raised, is a context that leads toward a dignified life, a healthy, contented life. When you neglect that and you allow the outside world to start dictating what happens inside the home, when the outside sets the rhythm for what happens, around the dinner table, if there even is a dinner table, and a kind of a shared daily experience and liturgy like that, that's when things go haywire. And so I think, we'll probably talk about this too, right? I am a candidate running for Congress, and I tell people this: if you want to understand the sort of policy orientation of Jace Yarbrough, it's the restoration, promotion of the American family. And, you can get many other things right, but if you don't get that right, things are still going to be fundamentally wrong in a serious way.
I mean, you've oriented your entire life around family. I mean, even to how you school your kids, which I think is fascinating. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead. I don't know when y'all started this school, but so you start practicing law. You're here in the area, and raising a family. At some point, you're looking at schools. You're looking at how do we train these kids up in the way they should go academically. How did you decide on that?
Yeah, we had always been a homeschooling family. My oldest, who's now 12, my wife had homeschooled him since he was of age. She is a teacher. She's a trained teacher. Middle school choir was her favorite thing to teach. But in COVID again was a real turning point. We had friends, family, who observed what was happening in the public schools, and we were already aware, which is why I'm a public school educated kid all the way through. Now that's a very different experience. In a little bitty town, 700 people.
Oh yeah, they operate like private schools.
Yeah, basically, right? My mom was a substitute teacher. She was there almost every day, right? My teachers are in Sunday school with me at church on the weekends, right? But they had serious concerns. They didn't have the means to send their kids to the private school options that existed, and they didn't feel like they had the formation to give their kids what they wanted on their own. So we felt very led. I felt very called to start a school. Now, a couple of things that are unique about ours. It is a farm school, so most of our instruction happens outside, which is great. We've got livestock and
hitting trees with sticks.
Hitting trees with sticks. That's right. Getting zapped by the electric wire that keeps the pigs in line. Right. Great war stories. Right. For these little ones. It's also, the lower school is exclusively parent led. Mm-hmm. So if you are going to come and be a member, it's a high barrier to entry, but once you're in, because we rely on you so heavily, but once you're in, you're very much, you're in this intimate setting which you're teaching and offering instruction to students each day that we're on campus, and we're a 2-day-a-week collaborative school. We have monthly book club and twice a year annual training for, usually the mom is the one who's providing the instruction. I sometimes say that our St. Francis Academy, the name of our school, is a training for mothers and families. And as a byproduct, you sort of educate and form your children. It has been an incredible blessing. The Lord's favor is on that school, and I've been thrilled to be a part of it. Just by way of example, members of our family have lived on the property where we currently live since 2015. So they'd been there for about 7 years when we decided to launch the school, which we did. We chose the name St. Francis Academy because of St. Francis's connection to nature and animals. Anyway, a couple days after we picked the name, my second son, he really likes rocks and likes to find cool, beautiful rocks. He comes in from playing outside at this home where, at least some members of our family have been for over 7 years, and he has this little medallion. And he says, "Hey, Dad, look what I found." And it's a little medallion that says St. Francis. Pray for us. Little things like that the Lord has done and given us to say, I'm here. I'm with you. We're doing this together. And we pray morning, noon, and evening prayer at the school. And when I'm there, the only job I have is leading prayer. I ring a bell to do it, to sort of orient everybody. Hey, it's time to pray. And after the first couple of times doing that, the kids pick up on it, right? So, if you've never seen a 7-year-old sprint to pray, the Holy Spirit will whisper in my ear sometimes, you're doing a good job, right?
Yeah.
And that puts a fire in your belly, right? There's not much I've ever done professionally that gives me the kind of resolve to continue that project as those gifts that God gives you along the way. Yeah.
It's hard to do hard things. And I think there's a thread of belief out there that, hey, if I choose to do the hard things, then the going well with me will be satisfaction. It'll be all these different, positives for me. And you start to do the hard thing and it's hard and you're like, God, why is it hard? It's like, no, hard things are hard. Mm-hmm. But God is faithful, and He puts those. I think it's so cool that He puts those little attaboys in there of like, dude, keep going.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The role of difficulty and suffering in the life of the Christian, the main symbol of our faith is a cross, which is an instrument of torture. Not to be too morbid about it, but the purpose of that thing is to suffer and die. And so in His infinite goodness, the Lord has taken this terrible fact of suffering and death, and He kind of made it the central means by which He communicates grace to us in the world. And so if you're going to follow Christ, taking up your cross, then your life will necessarily include these kind of very difficult suffering moments. And if you want to get as close to Christ as you can, then the closer you can get to the kind of crucifixion that He endured, right? The better. Now, this isn't to say that you go seeking, suffering, and like masochism is not a good thing, right? Like 100%.
On the record, all right.
Yeah, just to be clear. But, there is a kind of losing yourself, right? When you see images of Christ on the cross, for example, and some of the more moving ones from the Christian tradition, there's a kind of like writhing and holding on there that I think calls to something. It calls to something very human and redemptive, right? It's like the only creature that can experience this and do this thing well is a human being, is a man, a spirit and a body together, right? And there's no other creature that has that. Angels don't have bodies. the animals, right? They don't have this sort of rational spirits that we do that can commune with God. And so, I mean, I've described campaigning this way. I do believe that the Lord called me to elected office, to run this race. And it is uncomfortable, to put it mildly, many aspects of it. It's difficult, but I feel like every piece of myself and the preparation that I've gone through is kind of, I'll have to call on all of it in order to do this thing well. And I'm like barely hanging on. I'm walking that tightrope, right? It's like when you see a gymnast who's sort of performing at kind of like the very, very highest levels, and it's enthralling and thrilling. Why? Because they almost fall over and over and over again, right? And for all believers, whatever your vocation is, if you can find that place where you're almost falling, it's very difficult. There is a kind of, you lose yourself, you die to yourself. And that is, in a weird way, when you experience it and you get a taste of it, and I'm sure you and your listeners will have done this, right? You don't really want to be anywhere else. Like that is the most, I am doing exactly what the Lord has prepared me to do. And it is hard and painful, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else on the planet right now doing anything else but this. And so it's a gift, and it requires a sort of letting go to say, I'm not writing my own story, right? I'm going to be faithful with my talents, faithful with what I think the Lord has called me to do in preparation. But at the end of the day, He writes a story, and His stories are always much more interesting than the stories we can come up with.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, it's you said it, dying to self. It's leaving it all on the table. It's, chasing that, the carrot of well done.
Yes.
Like you get there.
Yes.
Christ is like, well done.
Yes. One day He'll invite us to sit down at His table. And what we should want more than anything is when we do, He'll be like, all right, let's tell the war stories. Right?
Can you imagine?
Let's tell the war stories. Right? Remember when you did this?
Yeah.
Right? And then you just go back and forth, right? That's going to be a good day. And so sometimes I conceive of that, and I think I want to have lots of stories to talk about with Him.
One of the graces God gives is other men beside us as we go down these paths.
Yes.
That we hold back the wolves together, locking arms as we emulate Christ. Describe the guys that are in your life that help you do that and how that works.
I think a man's father is going to take pride of place in that story, and mine does. And he taught me how to suffer well. One of the things that he left me, he recently passed. One of the things that he left me was something he always said, he experienced some very difficult things in his life, many of which were beyond his control. And he would say, I don't know what God's doing, but I don't have to know. And that, to put it a little more eloquently, so Lewis and the Screwtape Letters, I'm sure you and the folks listening probably are familiar with the sort of structure of what that book is. But Uncle Screwtape, coaching Wormwood, says at one point to him, our cause is never more in danger than when your human subject looks round about upon a universe from which every trace of God has vanished, asks, why have I been forsaken? And still obeys. I think that was my dad in a lot of ways. And so when things are difficult and hard and it feels like I've been forsaken, I'm not going to get many chances to still obey. And I want to take every opportunity I can in those circumstances, because that'll be another treasure that I can talk about with Him when we get to the other side. So I'd put my dad there, kind of for that fundamental principle. I'm close with my brother. My brother's a good man. And he and his wife adopted 4 children out of the Texas foster care system that had been through incredible trauma. That trauma was visited on him and his wife and the rest of his family, and he persevered. He refused to let go. And those kids are doing great now. And he's doing great, and he is 10 times the man he he was before that process. I've got mentors, guys that are a little older, that took the time to impart their wisdom. That matters. All of it, though, with this idea that we're required to make wise decisions, but ultimately the Lord has his plans, and the first principle of wisdom is to fear him and to follow after whatever he's doing, and not sort of to always fall in behind him. Best buddy from law school, just a very perceptive, just has a gift of seeing things as they are, and had the formation and educational upbringing to have a lot of great context for interpreting what's going on now. So those are some guys that come to mind.
How do you're running for Congress, you've run for other things, you've served our country, you've basically, gone to the front lines of Lawfare. I know your theology on vocation as it pertains to government and all of these types of things. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to separate, your faith life, your personal life, and government. It's just kind of this thing over here. But God cares about all of it. How do you reason with somebody and talk to somebody who's trying to separate those things, church and state, and just that whole topic?
One of my favorite scriptural passages on this topic, you may remember the children of Israel and the sort of northern and southern kingdoms have split, and northern kingdom gets carried off, first. But then in 586 or something BC, I forget the exact year, but the Babylonians come in and they take the southern kingdom captive, and they take them back to Babylon. And this is a political captivity, cultural captivity. They're removed from their religious way of life, and not only those things, but they're in Babylon, which in the scriptures is like the city of Satan. This is as dark as it gets. Debauchery, licentiousness.
Yeah, it's over.
Irreligion.
If you're there, it's
exactly. And Jeremiah comes to the people, and he says, the first part of chapter 29, this is what the Lord tells you, the people that he caused to be carried away into captivity. Okay, you're thinking, all right, we've arrived here in Babylon. This place is obviously God-forsaken. He'll come and get us as long as we get our act together, right? So, okay, Jeremiah, how long do we have to be here? That's sort of the sense you get. And Jeremiah says, this is what the Lord says to you, captives that he caused to be carried away. Plant gardens, build houses, give your children away in marriage, take their children in marriage. For in the peace of that city, wherein I have caused you to be carried away captive, you will have peace. If that's not a call to a political vocation, I don't know what is. Now, it may be a call to other vocations, but it's certainly a call to a political vocation, to say Christ is sovereign over all things. The Lord, as the scripture teaches, has instituted authority for, good order. And my position is, if Christ is sovereign over something, then he will send at least some of his image bearers to have dominion over that place. And I don't see any reason to think that politics is any different. There's nothing inherently evil about politics, right? Like, the Lord is not going to redeem the sort of profession of prostitution or, assassins, right? I mean, those are inherently immoral acts. Mm-hmm. Politics, is it dirty? Is it muddy? Is it mucky? Yes, it is. But for all things which are not sinful, the Lord says, I have a plan for this, and I need people, and I will equip people and send them. So, politics ain't beanbag. It's very difficult. And, but I take seriously the call to say, even here, right? Even in a profession that's heavily ridiculed. I mean, if you had told my father that his oldest son was going to be a lawyer and a politician, he would not have taken it as a compliment. Most people don't, right? But it's a necessary part of life, and therefore it's a part of life that the Lord is concerned about.
Where do you think all this goes, where we're headed as a country?
That is a very broad question.
It is a very broad question.
And probably above my pay grade. Some things that I see, others have likened the current state of the American regime to the late Roman Empire. And, I'm not going to say it more eloquently than they did in terms of the decadency and the similarities in those respects. I do think President Trump and the America First movement is a late stage effort to recover a couple things. And ultimately the thing that has to be recovered is the centrality of Christ and Christianity to the American story and who we are as a people. Our origin story is a gift to the world. It's a gift to us as a people, and we have done everything we could to stamp it out, while at the same time drafting off of the benefits and common formation that our Christian faith and heritage has given us. One of the things that is unique about the American experience is that we understand the dignity of every individual. And whether you agree with me or not, religiously, politically, professionally, you are a person made in the image of God. And you may even reject him. You may spurn him. But as a Christian, I treat you with the dignity that is worthy of the image that you bear, whether you want to or not. I think that idea that has permeated our prior generations is one of the key reasons why our culture, our civilization, is one of the greatest the world's ever seen. If we want to continue that prosperity and ensure it and prevent the kind of decay into totalitarianism, chaos, and anarchy that has been the common experience, most common experience for men since the beginning of history that we know about, restoration of Christianity, the centrality of Christ to the American experience, and the family as the first training ground for participation in the great Christian tradition are essential.
In campaigning, you talk to a lot of people, and it's probably mostly people that are pretty engaged and pretty informed with what's going on. Do you find people are more encouraged or discouraged?
President Trump gave patriotic Americans hope that you could win. And so I find they're concerned, but they're ready to fight. I think there is a sense that we don't have many chances left to secure the kind of sanity that has been restored to our culture and our government under the Trump administration. And I think others see that too. And so they're ready to go all in to try and make permanent and long-lasting the gains and wins that we've seen under this administration. Mm-hmm. Not to be too hyperbolic, but there are fundamental questions of civilization versus barbarism that we got wrong under the Biden administration or previous Democratic administrations, even under some previous Republican administrations. The whole neoliberal project, right? We're going to, after World War II, right, we're going to ship tons of aid to our erstwhile enemies, open our own borders, invite them all in, give them preference over our own citizens. And we wake up 5 decades later, 6 decades later, 7 decades later and think, why are things so terrible? People are ready to fight for that. And I think they intuit that this is a time to stand.
Do you think people are becoming more informed? Because it seemed like people were just asleep. Mm-hmm. Asleep at the whole generations were asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. it is certainly the case that we drafted for a long time off of a common inheritance, that we've used up all that capital. We can't do that anymore. And so what's the phrase? You're not interested in politics. Politics is interested in you. That became real, I think, when certain options were put on the table for the first time by the radical left. It might be the case that your public school is going to castrate your son without you knowing about it. I mean, how much more...
People hear that and they're like, I mean, really?
Yes, really.
I mean, that's the front lines I'm talking about that you've been engaged with.
Absolutely, really. Yeah, absolutely, really. So, Denton ISD board 2 years ago now voted to put a pediatric clinic in a local high school. Now, that I'm not talking about a nurse. This is not a school nurse. This is a pediatric clinic. Why? Well, you want to offer certain services to students when they're not with their families, when they're not with their parents, right? And people say, oh, you know, I actually got into a spat with I wouldn't call it a spat. I was testifying on a bill that would have gutted a lot of pro-life laws we have here in the state of Texas in front of the state legislature. And one of the House members took issue with what I was saying. I don't know a single OGBYN doctor who wants to abort a child. I said, well, ma'am, you don't get out much, clearly. You can go to Amarillo, Texas right now and log into Facebook, pretend to be a 13-year-old girl, and you will get advertisements from abortionists in Albuquerque saying, Texas teen, you need an abortion, you don't even have to tell your parents, just call this number. We'll arrange for everything, right? That is a kind of barbarism that did not exist in our culture for a while because it was unthinkable, given our Christian formation, right? A Christian nation, a Christian people, we don't kill our babies in the womb, right? We recognize the divine image on every person, born or unborn. And when you lose that common inheritance, certain things become options. And when you lose that common inheritance in a very technologically sophisticated society, you can get some pretty gnarly consequences. The synthetic sex doctor industry is another one, right? This idea that through plastic surgery, I can turn a little boy into a little girl, and all the terrible consequences that go along with that. These are grave, barbaric, demonic things, and they confront people right where they are in everyday life on fundamental issues intimate to their regular sort of the people they interact with and care about most, their own children. So that is causing people to wake up, which I think is a good thing. But these are grave questions.
This goes back to the question of kind of where does it go from here if we don't do anything? I mean, these are the things we know that are happening. I can't even imagine the things that we don't know and that are hidden from us for now until they believe that the culture is ready to know these things are happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, have you run across in the legal world things that you're like, I can't even speak of these things?
This won't be new to your listeners, but we were defending, the state of Washington passed a bill, I don't know how many years ago now. And the gist of it was, if you as a counselor do anything other than affirm a minor who comes in for gender dysphoria treatment, do anything other than affirm, right? This isn't a ban on sort of biblical Christian counseling. This is no, you may not be neutral. Mm-hmm. You must affirm the child in his or her distorted sense of gender. Every instance it happens, it's a $5,000 fine. You risk losing your license. So we're writing an amicus brief for this, and so I've got to kind of do a deep dive. And my job was basically to point out all the ways in which the quote-unquote medical community had been wrong in the past, knowingly wrong, and affirmatively recommended and pushed treatments and regimes and studies that did real physical harm to the subjects. And so as part of that, I sort of have to dive into this, like, what is transgender care? And I had to lay down 4 or 5 times to avoid passing out from just the stuff I was reading, the kind of procedures that exist. And I'm not even going to go into the pictures. And I came away from that, and one of the phrases that I used was, the pagans have nothing on us as to what we do to our children in the name of science. It's demonic. That's the only way I know how to describe it. And it robs families of future generations, right? It cuts fathers off from their children and their grandchildren. And it's a ghastly thing.
I mean, it's so easy to be black-pilled and to just be like, it's over. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. Mm-hmm. What do you say to men, especially who hold to that view of like, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. It's over. It's terrible.
Despair is a sin. Mm-hmm. If you're a Christian, you're not allowed to do that. That's off limits. You may have any number of other responses. You may get angry the way Job got angry and speak to God in that anger. And apparently the Lord was pretty okay with it, as long as it was honest. But you may not despair. And that despair is a testament to how you understand the Lord's sovereignty and activity in the world and the justness or rightness of his plan for you. Maybe his plan for you was to live and die fighting for results that you will never see in a civilization that will ultimately pass away either during your lifetime or afterward. It is not you to question whether that's a sufficient life to live. As long as it's lived in service to the Lord, it'll be a glorious life. And I guess Jonathan is probably the best picture of this, right? He's the son of the king of Israel, rightful heir to the throne. God comes in and says, nope, giving it to somebody else. Not for anything that you did, but because of the sin of your father. And what does Jonathan do? He says, great, cool, I'm all in. Where are we going? What are we doing? Everything I can do to support the Lord's anointed while honoring my father. And you may remember how Jonathan died. Jonathan died in a battle that was being waged because his father got in a skirmish, right? Now, that's an example of just abandon for the Lord, right? I don't know what God's plan is for, and you can see it in other parts of Jonathan's life, right? I'm thinking now, there's a story in which Israel's camped, and Jonathan, his armor bearer, he sort of looks up and he sees, I guess, some guys sort of nearby, some of the enemy army. He says, hey, let's see if the Lord will let us go and take it. And God says, yeah, go up. And so they go, right? And just him and like one other dude go up and, take some of these guys. Jonathan, I think, is a great example of follow hard after the Lord, fight for the Lord, even in the midst of what looks to be a crumbling regime around you. Because the Lord never wastes any effort like that. And again, one lens to view this through is when I get to the other side and he invites me to sit down at his table, I want to have lots of stories to talk with him about. Lots of stories. So give me those chances to obey you even when it looks like I've been forsaken, right? Because those really dark places, and that's where he just shows up and you lose yourself. And it's the most glorious thing.
Well, Jace, as I said before, like I am so encouraged by you and your shout of God, here I am, send me. Mm. I just pray that more men would do that. Here are my flaws, here are my gifts, like whatever you've put together in me, like here I am. I'm going to do what you want me to do. And I'm going to listen to your word. I'm going to listen to the men you put around me by your grace. And I'm going to courageously lead my family and those around me to your throne. And that's all we're called to do. And you're doing it, man.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't quite know how to respond. I'm nervous about being elevated in that way. But I appreciate that. And insofar as those things are true and others draw encouragement from them, thanks be to God.
Well, so give you the floor. What's going on right now that people can follow what you're doing? What are you running for? Where is it? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So running for Congress, Texas 32. Folks can certainly follow us. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jace Yarbrough, or go to our website, Jace for Congress. Jace for Congress. It's JACEFOR Congress.com. This seat, Texas 32, is one of the 5 new Republican seats that were created when the Texas legislature redrew the congressional maps this summer. Like many other patriotic Americans and Texans, I want to make sure each of these seats is filled with an unapologetic supporter of the America First agenda and President Trump. This seat, there was somebody who fit that bill, who was in that lane, who was going to run for this seat, and then decided about Thanksgiving that she wasn't going to do that. And some mentors approached me and said, hey, so-and-so is not going to do this. You really need to think about it. I had served as a precinct chair in the 2020 cycle in the new Texas 32. The portion I lived in was also in the old Texas 32. And so we started making phone calls. The Lord has called me to this sort of thing, and so I pay close attention, and I help where I'm able, and I'm fairly aware of what's going on in the state. But the Lord just didn't open doors. He kind of kicked them down, blew them open. And I literally was sitting outside the Republican Party of Texas's office on December the 8th in the afternoon, which is the filing deadline, and had many, many good people, big names that you would probably know, encouraging us to do this. And so my wife and I made the decision to do it. And so we are in a crowded field. There are about 11 candidates. I think there are 11 candidates in the race. But we're the only viable option that the people of Texas 32 can trust to fight for and deliver on the America First agenda. And so that's the race we're in. That's what we're doing. It's going great. We have huge support from so many good people. Hard launch was yesterday, actually. So even though we filed back in early December, we sort of had our big kickoff yesterday. So folks can go online and sort of see some of the results of that. But I'm hitting all of the 8 counties in the district. So there are 8 or parts of 8 different counties here in the district up here in North Texas. So we've got some of Collin, some of Dallas, all of Rockwall, the southern part of Hunt County, then all of Rains and Wood and Upshur and Camp. So starts here in kind of northwest Dallas, stretches all the way out toward Tyler and Longview. Lots of good people. It's a Trump plus 17 district. So these are patriotic Americans who love their country and want to fight for it, want somebody who will represent their values well. I'm thrilled in some ways to be back on the campaign trail. Like I said, there are moments when I kind of lose myself in it because that's what happens to anybody when they're stepping out of their vocation. So that's great. Also difficult to be gone so much, and this is a fairly intense run. So March the 3rd is primary day. Early voting starts the 17th of February, which is just around the corner. So our goal and our effort is to get out and meet as many people as we can, tell our story to as many people as we can, hear from them and get a sense of what's on their minds, and build coalitions, and then go and play a small part, but a part in making sure that we make permanent the prosperity, security, and goodwill that the president has already begun to usher in.
I love it. Well, 10 years from now, when you have more time, well, I want to unpack like almost every topic you covered. Like I want to go deeper into the education stuff because you gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard on classical education. We could go hours on that. I want to go deeper into just your faith journey, all the legal stuff. Like all of it is so fascinating, goes so deep, and is so correct. But anyway, you got people to talk to.
Sure. Well, Brian, thanks for having me on. I'd love to come back at any time. It's a pleasure talking with you. And insofar as things that we're doing can be encouraging or helpful, then I'm happy to be a guest.
Well, that's what it's all about, making ready, formation of men. Thanks, Jace. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Brian.